Last year, near the end of the regular season, I dropped this video about NFL referees and the terrible calls they made that decided the outcome of several games that week. While this has been a problem for the NFL for decades now, the league hasn't really done anything to solve it. And because of these bad calls, more and more fans each week believe that the league is rigged, since the refs often show clear favoritism towards certain players and teams. Viewers are starting to become sick and tired of watching the refs decide the outcome of games, as it probably happens at least 2 or 3 times every single week. But when I made that video last year, I only highlighted a handful of certain plays throughout that season. So I figured since we're almost halfway through this NFL season, and it feels like there's been more bonehead calls than usual, I decided now would be a good time to run it back and break down the worst of NFL referees through the first 7 weeks of play. Before I get into it, welcome to the War Room. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you're new, and let's get straight to it. Now, I understand that the referees are human and we all make mistakes, blah blah blah. So this video is going to highlight the more egregious calls and no calls from weeks 1 through 7 this year, starting with the very first NFL game of the season. One of the big stories of this game was Chiefs offensive lineman Juwan Taylor committing a false start almost every passing play, but only getting flagged for it once near the end of the game. The announcers who were aware of what was going on brought in the rules expert, who confirmed that this early jump by Taylor should have been flagged every single time. I don't think the refs decided not to throw the flag. I genuinely don't think they saw him jumping back a full foot before the ball was snapped every play, which honestly makes it worse. In their defense, they did get better at calling this in the weeks following, but considering Taylor easily did this over a dozen times, and everyone noticed it besides the refs on the field, was kind of ridiculous. In the Eagles-Patriots matchup in a one-possession game, Ramondre Stevenson had this 10-yard carry into the red zone, but the play was called back because this was deemed holding on number 85 Hunter Henry, though it appears to be a standard block that happens 100 times a game. A call also went against the Eagles later in the game, when this was called roughing the passer on Milton Williams, even though gravity just caused Mac Jones to fall on top of him. In the Commanders-Cardinals matchup, there was this completed pass to Logan Thomas, but it was called back for offensive pass interference on number 87 John Bates because he did this. On a third and long screen pass, Antonio Gibson was marked short of the line of gain. After Ron Rivera challenged the spot, you can clearly see the ball being across the first down marker as his left elbow hits the ground. But despite having the benefit of replay, the challenge was unsuccessful, leaving Commanders fans in disbelief. In week 2, the Broncos converted this Hail Mary with no time remaining, and they had to go for 2 to send it to overtime. But Russell Wilson's pass to Courtland Sutton was incomplete and Denver lost, though on replay, it looks like he was grabbed prior to receiving the pass. This play happened in the Steelers-Browns game, and in full speed, even before the replay, you can see there is a clear face mask on Deshaun Watson before he got tackled to the ground. There was a penalty called on this play, but it was against the Browns for holding. This replay of DeMarvin Leal with a handful of Watson's face mask with the ref in the background looking directly at it tells you all you need to know. In the crucial final drive of that matchup, this incomplete pass on 4th down ended the game, though replay showed Joey Porter with a handful of the receiver's jersey well before the ball got there. On this play, I want you to guess which player jumps first, the guy in white or the guy in blue, and then guess who the penalty is on. The refs threw a flag, but the penalty was on Quentin Nelson for a false start, and not on the Texans for clear neutral zone infraction right before that. This was originally called illegal contact on Charvarius Ward, which was the correct call, but after further discussion, it was changed to no penalty because Matthew Stafford was outside the pocket, though replay clearly shows he was in fact still in the pocket. The calls continued in week 3. On this deep pass to Amari Cooper, he made the catch, broke a tackle, and had a chance to score a touchdown. But the play was blown dead because the referee standing less than 10 feet away claimed that Cooper stepped out of bounds. And as you can see, not only did he not step out of bounds, but it wasn't even close. In a crucial play in the Ravens-Colts game, Zay Flowers was brought down by his face mask on this play. A flag was thrown, but as you probably guessed, it was not because of the face mask. It was because number 15 Nelson Aguilar was called for a block in the back. You make the call for yourself. In another crucial play of overtime, this was not called pass interference against the Colts, which would have given the Ravens a first down. Instead, the Colts later scored on that possession and won the game. Despite not making intentional head-to-head contact with the quarterback and not landing on him with his weight, Minkah Fitzpatrick was still called for roughing the passer for this hit on Jimmy Garoppolo. However, this tackle of Justin Fields, where he literally got punched in the head, was not a penalty that same week. Against the Bucks, Lane Johnson did his best Juwan Taylor impersonation, jumping a stride and a half backwards before the ball was snapped, but there was no flag for a false start. The Jets defense was a little bit rough with Mac Jones following his QB sneak attempt where no flags were thrown. Now there's no problem with a little pushing and shoving after the play, but it makes you wonder what the refs would have done had this been a different quarterback in the league. Week 4 was arguably the worst officiated week so far. In Bengals Titans, Ryan Tannehill threw an incomplete pass which would have ended the Titans' drive. However, Nick Scott of the Bengals committed a penalty for unnecessary roughness because of this hit on the quarterback. In the Raiders-Chargers game, keep an eye on number 16 for this one and try to find out what he did wrong. Well, the refs deem this as an illegal crackback block, even though it doesn't look much different than most blocks during a normal football game, and the Raiders got a penalty. Which brings us to the Sunday night football game that week between the Jets and Chiefs, maybe the worst officiated game so far this season. Early in the game, there was this tackle attempt on Breece Hall, where he clearly grabbed the defender's face mask. The flag was thrown on this play, but it went against the Chiefs for a horse collar tackle, even though by rule, horse collar tackles don't apply to grabbing the front of the jersey. But don't worry, the referees made sure to even it out for Kansas City later in the game, because in the fourth quarter of the most crucial drive of the game, Mahomes dropped back on a 3rd and 22. He ended up running for the first down and a flag was thrown, making you think it was offensive holding and it was going to get called back. But no, the flag was on the Jets for illegal contact, and 5 yards was added to the end of the run. However, number 11 Jermaine Johnson getting manhandled the entire time Mahomes was in the pocket, which allowed him to run for 22 plus yards, went completely unnoticed. Less than 2 minutes later on the same drive, Mahomes threw this interception, giving the Jets a potential game-winning drive on offense, but it was called back because this was considered holding on Sauce Gardner. Not only is this a soft holding call, but notice when the ref actually throws the flag. The supposed holding happened here at the 35-yard line. Michael Carter makes the interception 20 yards later at the 15. And only then, after the ball was turned over, does the referee decide to throw the flag for a penalty that happened about 5 seconds before the pick. It's one thing to make a bad call, but it's completely different to blatantly let a penalty go only to call it after the ball is turned over later in the play. There were tons of bad calls in the Week 5 Bears-Commanders Thursday Night Football matchup, but maybe the worst came on this pass to DJ Moore, when the refs again straight up lied about a player stepping out of bounds when very clearly he did not, taking a possible touchdown off the board for Chicago for the time being. Since a lot of calls went against Washington in this game as well, I'll be fair and add one in. In the fourth quarter, this was originally called defensive pass interference on Tyreek Stevenson, which would have been the correct call. But after discussion, the refs picked up the flag, stating that he didn't illegally interfere with the receiver. The Raiders suffered a 15-yard penalty on this shove by Max Crosby after Zach Tom took a flop to the ground. Again, this is a part of football. It probably happens 50 times a game, and the punishment doesn't fit the crime. A 15-yard penalty for this is just soft. In the Jags-Bills London game, Josh Allen sacked Josh Allen. The officials right away claimed that Josh Allen hit Josh Allen a little bit too hard, and roughing the passer was called. Yes, it was a hard hit, but this begs the question of what is the guy on defense supposed to do in this situation? It's a completely normal sack. He probably could have hit him a lot harder if he wanted to, yet still it's somehow not allowed in today's game. The very next play, the Jags got one back, because on this touchdown pass to Gabe Davis, offensive pass interference was called on number 86, Dalton Kincaid. Even though the contact he made with the defender happened maybe 10 yards away from where Davis caught the ball, giving him virtually no advantage to catching the pass. Now we move to week 6, in a play that directly impacted who won the Giants-Bills Monday Night Football game. Tyrod Taylor threw this incomplete pass to Darren Waller as time expired, though you can clearly see him being held the entire time, which affected his ability to jump and make the catch. This is maybe the worst no call all season long from NFL refs, and it gave the Bills a win. In Vikings-Bears, Kirk Cousins threw this backwards pass, which was a fumble and recovered by the Bears. But after review, it was decided that the Bears defender was out of bounds when he recovered the ball, and possession stayed with Minnesota. This was ruled roughing the passer on number 3, Derwin James. You make the call if the contact he made with Dak was anything out of the ordinary. However, when rookie Bryce Young gets shoved much harder well after the ball was thrown, there was no flag on the play. Back to the Chargers-Dallas game, there was no pass interference thrown against LA on this deep pass, but yet again, there seemed to be tons of contact that affected the receiver's ability to catch the ball. While in Saints-Texans that same week, there was no defensive pass interference called, though the receiver's route was completely altered because of contact that was made. And finally, that brings us to week 7. The big story this week was Colts versus Browns, which was completely decided by the referees. In a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, the Browns turned the ball over to the Colts, seemingly ending the game. But but a flag was thrown for illegal contact right here against Indianapolis, which means the Browns kept possession. The very next play, PJ Walker threw a pass out of the end zone. Another flag was against the Colts, this time for pass interference, even though the ball was completely uncatchable and the pass interference had zero effect on the play. The ball was placed at the 1-yard line, the Browns scored a touchdown and won the game. On the Eagles' tush push, offside was called on both teams. While the Dolphins player is clearly offsides, the call against the Eagles was because of the hand placement right here. However, this hand belongs to center Jason Kelce, and centers are allowed to have their hand next to the ball when it's snapped. In the same game, the inconsistent roughing the passer calls continued, as the Dolphins were penalized because of this push on Jalen Hurts, even though the defender hit him as light as humanly possible given the situation. Similar call in the Bills-Patriots game, as this was considered roughing the passer against the Patriots, though it was more of a Josh Allen flop than anything. This was called pass interference against the Rams late in their game against the Steelers, despite there being little to no contact that affected the receiver's ability to make the catch. Later on that drive, Kenny Pickett tried a QB sneak on 4th down, and he appeared to be short. The refs marked the spot of the ball incorrectly, giving Pittsburgh a 1st down, and because the Rams didn't have any timeouts and this happened outside of the 2-minute warning, the spot couldn't be reviewed and the game was over. There were probably 100 other bad calls and no calls that I didn't cover, but if I covered everything, this video would be 4 hours long. Moral of the story is something needs to change in the NFL. Every single week, there are blatant decisions made by the referees that are wrong and have a direct impact on who wins the game. When we look back at this season, don't be surprised if several calls going in a certain team's favor was the difference in a team making the playoffs or playoff seeding. And in 2023, with all the technology we have, this should not be happening on a weekly basis. If the league decides to brush this under the rug like they usually do, it wouldn't be shocking if more and more fans quit watching football, while the narrative that the NFL is rigged continues to grow. What should the league do to improve officiating? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'm going to be making NFL content like this all season long, so do not miss out. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next one.